And welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Well, my next guest escaped the wave of anti-incumbent, anti-democratic sentiment that actually ousted several of his colleagues last week, but just barely. Congressman Bill Owens bested Republican businessman Matt Doheny in the North Country's 23rd district by a margin of just 51 to 49%. But of course, they were not the only names on the ballot last Tuesday. Tea Party candidate Doug Hoffman, who lost to Doheny in the primary and then subsequently quit the race, still won about 6% of the vote, and some say that this gave Bill Owens a major advantage. Congressman Bill Owens is joining us tonight from Watertown. Congressman, congratulations on your win, and thanks for being here.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, this is going to be new for you. You're going to be in the minority, and how are you adjusting to your new life?
Well, you know, I think that when you take into account the fact that the Democrats still control the Senate and we also have a Democratic administration, I think it's going to cause all of us to have to reach some middle ground, some compromise in order to get things done. And I think that's what the American people expects of us, that we act responsibly and we govern together.
So you actually expect that the acrimony that has really sort of gripped Washington in recent months is going to loosen because of what's happened here?
Well, I think there's going to be some play, obviously, in the process. I think for the first couple of months we may see some posturing. But I think when it comes down to it, I think the American people are going to demand that we act responsibly. And it's going to put pressure on both sides, which I think is a good thing, to reach appropriate compromise and resolve the issues that are facing the country.
I mean, because you are talking about a situation in which someone like Mitch McConnell has said that his main goal and the main goal for Republicans is to keep Barack Obama from getting reelected to a second term.
I understand that the senator has said that, but again, I think that after a couple of months of posturing, they're going to start to get feedback from the American people, and the American people are going to say, get some things done, we need some issues resolved, and we're looking to you to get it done. And I'm hoping that that's the direction this goes in.
Okay, from a purely nuts and bolts standpoint, what does this mean for you? Do you have to move your office, for example? Your committee assignments could change, and the constituents, you probably won't be able to bring home as much as you had in the past.
Well, let me try and answer those in order. I will be moving my office because that would have happened under any circumstances. Whatever the makeup of Congress was, my seniority is not high enough to retain that office. In terms of committee assignments, obviously, Mr. Boehner has indicated some committees may be smaller. That could clearly impact how many committee assignments one gets. So we're going to have to see how that plays out over the next 30 to 60 days. And in terms of the ability to look at things that are needed for the district, I think that we're going to be in pretty good shape. Again, we have the support of our two senators who are in the majority in the Senate, and we have the support of the administration. So I think we're going to be able to continue to find the ability to assist our constituents in the projects that they need to get accomplished.
So now you're seeing that Nancy Pelosi, who was a big issue in this campaign actually, so much so that you had an ad that actually highlighted how much you had crossed the aisle to vote with John Boehner and the Republicans because you were your opponent was trying to paint you as too liberal and too tied to Nancy Pelosi. She now wants to keep her leadership of the Democratic Minority Conference. It looks like she's going to be able to. Are you going to be supporting her?
Well, what I've indicated is that if you know, the Speaker, possibly the minority leader, is prepared to move to the center and govern from the center, then I'm prepared to support her. If she's not prepared to do that, then I would have a great deal of difficulty supporting her.
Okay, well,
I think it's very...
I'm
it's
sorry.
very important that we move to the center.
Okay, but I think there are many people who probably agree with you. Chuck Schumer has been talking about the middle class and what had gone wrong with the Democrats. However, what does that mean to you, move to the center? What does Nancy Pelosi have to do to demonstrate to you that she is in fact willing to move to the center, such that she will satisfy your desire to see that happen and get your vote?
Well, let me give you a very good example. Several members of Congress and I have resubmitted a letter we sent prior to adjournment on the Bush tax cuts. I'm looking for her to evidence support for our proposal or something similar to that as evidence that she's prepared to move to the center.
Now, and you haven't received that yet?
I have not. Actually, I never received a response to the first letter from either Mr. Boehner or the Speaker, and obviously no one is really back in Washington, and I wouldn't expect a response before next week.
Well, there's actually not, that I know of at any rate, a candidate who is coming forward to say that they want to challenge Nancy Pelosi. So what will you do then? If she doesn't move to the center, will you simply just abstain?
I'm going to have to give that some very, very careful thought as to what I'll do, but certainly abstaining is one of the options.
Now, you also have a rather fierce battle going on in your party for the #2 position, the whip position, between Steny Hoyer and Bill Clyburn. Have you made a decision about who you'll be supporting? Because I know one Western New York Congressman, Brian Higgins, has already indicated his support for Steny Hoyer.
I'm going to be supporting Steny. Steny is a person who is a moderate, and I'm very confident will govern from the center, so he has my support.
This kind of battle, though, this kind of very fierce internal battle, it can't be helpful to the Democrats at a time when the party is just trying to sort of reconnect after a really disappointing showing in the general election.
Well, I think anytime you have a major event like has happened in the Democratic Party, it's going to take a little time for the dust to settle and for people to figure out what direction they're going to go in. I think that I certainly would have preferred that this had been put off a couple of weeks, but the battle began to ensue, very shortly after the election was over. And I think it's going to take some time, but the real issue is going to be how do we respond when we look at the legislation that's being put forward by our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. If it's reasonable, do we respond appropriately to that? And I'm looking forward to being able to analyze the legislation that the Republicans put forward and determine how it affects the district and how it's going to play out in terms of public policy. And I'm going to look at each piece of legislation in that way.
I've also spoken today to Pete King, who is now, of course, the most powerful congressman in New York because he is the senior Republican member of the delegation. And he suggested that he does not think that any of this bodes well for President Obama and that he may not be able to recover in time for 2012. What is your feeling about the president's chances in 2012?
Well, I think a lot depends upon how the president responds. And if we look back historically, President Clinton did quite well after a similar series of events, and he moved to the center and was quite effective. Got a lot of things done. President Clinton produced a budget surplus during his years in office. He produced 23 million jobs. So there's a lot of possibilities here for President Obama. I think he's an intellectually capable guy, and I hope that he has the flexibility to move towards the center, and I think if he does, he could be quite successful in 2012.
Just real quickly, you're going to be returning to Washington for a lame duck session. Chief, among your hopes, what is it that you're hoping to accomplish?
Well, clearly I'd like to see some action taken on the Bush tax cuts, and as I indicated, I've submitted, along with 3 other members, a compromise position on that. I'd also like to see the estate tax legislation resolved. My view on that is that I'd like to see the rates stay the same and that we get a $3.5 to a $5 million per person credit. I think that would take care of about 99.5% of the families and businesses and farms in this district. Those are really the 2 primary things we need to get resolved. I'd also like to see us resolve get a continuing resolution for budget purposes in place, and I'd like to see the defense budget passed.
Well, we will hopefully catch up with you after this session, and we'll see how well you did. In the meantime, I want to thank you very much, Congressman Bill Owens, for joining us this evening.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.